Merhaba arkadaşlar. ATEK Yurtdışı Eğitim Danışmanlık tarafından düzenlenen e, bir eğitim webinarına hoş geldiniz. Warwick Üniversitesi Warwick Management Group tarafından bugün inovasyon ve girişimcilik üzerine Profesör J. Bal tarafından bir ders gerçekleşecek. Dersi sunumunu yapması için Warwick Üniversitesi'nden Catherine Fawcett Hanım'a sözü bırakacağım. Katie, it's your turn now.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's really nice to welcome you to this webinar today. So my name is Cathy Fawcett, and I'm the recruitment manager in the Wmg department at Warwick. Hopefully you will all have heard of Warwick University as one of the UK's leading universities. And the Wmg department is the largest academic department in the University of Warwick. We have master's education, postgraduate education, and PhD, and we teach 15 different master's courses across management, technology, business, all this sort of area. I've put a link into the chat of the course MSc Innovation and Entrepreneurship that my colleagues, Professor J. Bal and Professor Jean Ma, will be talking about today. And I'll also go through the chat and put a few additional links in so that you can find how to connect with us on a regular basis. I think Alpa will be able to send a follow-up email as well, just so that you can connect to us and contact us if you've got any questions at all about the presentation, about studies at Warwick, about studies in WMG. And then finally, one really lovely thing that's we've just been ranked as the MSc in Innovation and Entrepreneurship as #1 in the UK and #25 in the world. So that's a fantastic success story as well for this course. So I'm going to pass you over to Zhao to introduce himself, and I'll be answering your questions in the chat.
Hello, I hope you can all hear me. Thank you, Cathy, for the intro. I'm Xiao, and I'm very glad to meet you all. I work here as an associate professor here in WMG, and I and my colleague, Professor J. Bao, together, we teach on the entrepreneurial course, or the full name is Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I returned from industry back to academia, so I'm a serial entrepreneur, I guess. So I founded about 5 businesses. I'm just about to finish my 5th one by raising probably my last round of funding in Series A. Then I can have a pretty hands-off approach, I hope. I worked with many other businesses in my previous career in consulting, including nearly 2 years at Boston Consulting Group. That's about me. Jay?
Hello, everybody. A bit different from Zhao. My background is kind of more working in large businesses until sort of in more recent times, then moving over to helping small businesses, and then finally how to increase the success rate of entrepreneurs. So Zhao and I, for many years, have worked together with a small business group at WMG, which is a team of about 30 people who are just employed to go out and help small businesses with technology, with management, with skills training. But Zhao and I also run an incubator, which actually takes on a lot of the students that have been through the program and helps them and supports them in developing their businesses. And we also run an accelerator as well, which is for businesses that have started up, but now they need to grow or they want to grow. And we help them accelerate their scale and operations. But I mean, that's some of the background. But what I really want to talk about is these entrepreneurial skills, this entrepreneurial mindset. Now, entrepreneurship is a mindset, I believe, and it's a problem-solving mindset. It's one that's kind of fascinated by problems, and it's the first kind of action in the mindset is how could we solve this problem in a profitable way? And I think that's the really at the core of being a great. And the course that we've set up is first and foremost, it's about developing that mindset. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that mindset and the characteristics. And then secondly, it's about acquiring the breadth of knowledge to be able to set up and grow a business. And this is kind of different from many other master's degrees. A lot of master's degrees give you in-depth knowledge into a particular area. But entrepreneurship is about breadth. It's about knowing a little about a lot of things and being able to combine those things together to often to create innovation and to create new types of businesses or businesses that work in new ways. So it's kind of different, and it's very much driven by this mindset. I want to start off really by looking at the situation in Turkey. So I did a little bit of research, and there is a kind of ecosystem of support for entrepreneurs in Turkey. It's been obviously, like many things, it's been encouraged more by the COVID-19 crisis, like it has in many other countries. There's been this special Kororothon Turkey project, which has been trying to create new startups. I'm a bit disappointed with the 1,500 participants that they only created 12 new startups. But what it indicates is that Turkey is recognizing, like many other countries we work with, Cyprus, Singapore, China, India, this drive for talent and increasing the level of talent on entrepreneurship in the countries. Most countries see this as a key to their future success. And I think partly in this early presentation, I want to talk about how it's a key to your success, or it's also a key for the organization you work for to help them succeed. Our course is called Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and we particularly focus on innovative entrepreneurship. How do we create businesses that are different? Copying other businesses is often our first default action, but copying just creates more competition. It just makes it harder for everybody. It's actually cheaper to do something different than to compete. Competition is, and a number of prominent entrepreneurs agree with this, but competition is really for losers. We kind of taught in education that competition is good, but actually if you're an entrepreneur, competition is bad. This competition means you have to have low prices, you have to have great service, you have to have really take care of your customers and invest. I don't want to do that if I want to start a business. I want a business where the customers come down, give me their money, and run away with the goods I'm offering them. I don't want competition. But somehow we've been taught that competition is good. But from the point of view of an entrepreneur, competition is bad. And what we do is we focus on innovation to avoid competition. Because I want no competition. I want customers coming, throwing their wallets at me, saying, take all my money. I need what you've got. That's the ideal kind of vision for an entrepreneur. So if we sort of look how kind of Turkey does in terms of entrepreneurial behavior and attitudes, well, it kind of performs reasonably average in most of those things. I think the key things to look for here is the blue line is 2018, and the black dot is the kind of the global average. So in terms of the opportunities, Turkey sees that's pretty average compared to the rest of the world. In terms of the capability within Turkey to undertake entrepreneurship, it seems like the viewpoint, the perception is much higher than the global average. But against that, the fear of failure rate is also lower. So it seems like Turkish entrepreneurs are very brave and bold, and they believe that they will succeed. This kind of inherent confidence in that. And the intention rate is really quite high compared to the world average. So more Turkish people want to become entrepreneurs or intend to become entrepreneurs than the global average. About 30% of the eligible population by the looks of it. Perform so well against the global average. It looks like they don't really teach entrepreneurship very well in schools by the looks of it, judging by that TEA, early stage entrepreneurial activity. But on most other measures, they kind of perform pretty close to the global averages. A more detailed look at kind of Turkey and entrepreneurship, the kind of support system in Turkey for entrepreneurship it sort of scores okay, but it doesn't score great. So 1 is very insufficient and 5 is very sufficient, very good. And Turkey, on a number of different factors, for example, on government policies, it scores kind of just below 3. Government entrepreneurship programs, it scores sort of not very good there, 2.5. And very poor on education in schools, entrepreneurial education. But overall, it's kind of got a support system for training and helping entrepreneurs, but it's not really outstanding. Areas where it does, I mean, the physical infrastructure is reasonably good. Another high point is that the market is relatively flexible there. I think people are adapting or willing to change. So what that tells me is there's a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs in Turkey overall. So why should you study entrepreneurship, I think is the question. And this is probably one of the slides that shocked me the most and shocks a lot of people a lot. Your success, 85% of your financial success, and also there's other research that says it's kind of generally not just your financial success, but your success in life is due to your personal abilities, your personality, your ability to communicate, to negotiate, and to lead. And these are really the core skills that an entrepreneur develops and builds up themselves as part of this. Is when I talk about the entrepreneurial mindset, these are the key things in the entrepreneurial mindset. And only 15% of your future success is really actually due to any kind of technical knowledge. You know, you go along and study electronic business, or you study marketing or whatever. All of that in-depth knowledge, that kind of technical knowledge that you build up, that only contributes about 15% to your overall kind of success. It's I think the key thing is the way that you use the knowledge. But also the point I made earlier, that it's about having a broad knowledge set, not an in-depth, in very narrow area knowledge set. These are the factors that lead to success in life generally. The research kind of indicates. So what are these sort of behaviors that are important that build upon that? Well, these behaviors are very similar to or they're developed by the entrepreneurial mindset. And that's being able to see and create opportunities. Now, many of us see things and we complain about them, but almost everything we complain about is an opportunity. Because if we're complaining about it, other people are complaining about it, and some people will be willing to pay to fix it. But it's not just seeing those things, it's how do we turn these ideas? Now, almost everybody has ideas, but very few people know how to turn those ideas into businesses. And that's kind of the essence of what we teach. We help you develop better ideas, but the key part is implementation. How do you learn? How do you go about implementing ideas? And the final success of any business is not dependent on the idea so much, it's dependent much more on the choices you make in how you implement the idea. And being a leader, inspiring people. As an entrepreneur, you don't often have a lot of money. So you have to find workers, you have to persuade customers, you have to work with suppliers, partners, and you have to show leadership, that people have got to believe in your vision and they go along. It's not like a manager instructs people, a leader, people follow them. And because you don't have a lot of money and resources, you have to use them smartly and also manage a risk in that way. Otherwise, people don't have confidence in you. And it's all about sharing and working with other people. So these kinds of skills really can kind of be demonstrated in this example. So this is Hong Kong. I don't know if any of you have been to Hong Kong, but you can take this equally as an example at almost every tourist location in Turkey. So these are queues in Hong Kong, all waiting to go up on the peak tram. And on the right is the picture of the peak tram. Now, what do you see when you see that queue of people almost every day queuing there? And this is what will differentiate kind of entrepreneurs from non-entrepreneurs. What do you see? Is the queue a problem to you? Are they blocking the pavements? Are they disturbing your life? Are they occupying the coffee shops that you want to go to because the queue's too long? Or do you see that and you see a queue? That's a problem. These people don't like queuing. What's going to happen? The government doesn't like them queuing there. What's going to happen? What might be a business or might be an opportunity as an entrepreneur from seeing that queue? So you have to, as an entrepreneurial mindset, you have to start questioning yourself. You have to start seeing problems and thinking, okay, what are the consequences of these problems? What might other people do about these problems? So in this particular case, the entrepreneur said, look, the Hong Kong government isn't going to like this. One, it's kind of annoying tourists, and secondly, it's kind of blocking our pavements and causing a nuisance. So he judged that the government would create another tram spot about halfway up onto this peak. And in anticipation of the government doing that, he went and bought and opened up a cafe outside about halfway up. And guess what? About a year later, after he opened up the cafe, the government built a tram stop halfway up opposite the entrance to the cafe. And suddenly the value of his cafe increased by about 5 times. That's kind of seeing problems and turning them into opportunities. And that's what developing an entrepreneurial mindset, that's an example of what happens. Now, that's a personal value. Also, if you work for another organization, having this entrepreneurial mindset also helps you really with these soft skills that companies are looking for. When companies are looking to recruit, and these are kind of from some of the latest surveys, top 7 skills, top 5 LinkedIn, top 10 skills. You look at these: creativity, persuasion, the ability to collaborate, being adaptable, understanding other people and understanding yourself. These are all really in-demand skills by most businesses. Certainly the smart businesses, the good businesses, this is what they value. This is what make a difference. So it also creates, going through an entrepreneurial mindset training will also create value. You may not want to start a business straight away, but you will be more valuable to potential employers because these skills that are in demand are the ones that are being developed for you, through you. And this is particularly important at the moment. I mean, for example, business environments are changing incredibly. So some of the things that are happening is the number of zombie businesses is increasing. So zombie businesses are like businesses that are okay, they run, they make money, but they'll never make enough money to pay back all their debts. And the number of zombie businesses in different countries varies. Now, I don't know what the figure is for Turkey, but in the UK, the figure was about 15%. In some Asian countries, the figure is 20% and up to 40% in very kind of state-dominated countries. My guess is that, and the number of zombie businesses has increased as a result of the COVID crisis, but my guess is that the number of zombie businesses in Turkey is probably around 20%, maybe 25%. Now, these are businesses that would have died off normally, but low interest rates or government support keeps them going. There's also lifestyle changes. People have changed in the things that they're willing to spend money on. There's a big change in spending money on experiences rather than possessions. So people don't want to buy products, they want to buy experiences. And that's a change. So that's challenged a lot of businesses and created a lot of opportunity. There's new capability. We have new technology, one of the big growth areas, and one of the big potential entrepreneurship areas in Turkey is online now. People want online services. They've got used to them through COVID. So how much of stuff can go online? And just as an example, if you look behind me, you see a bunch of goats. You think, how can goats go online? Well, this farm they rented goats for Zoom meetings. So I could have paid £5 and had a goat in this Zoom meeting today. And just for some fun, because everybody talks about sort of Zoom meetings are becoming boring. And this farm made £50,000 over the last kind of 9 months, renting out goats for Zoom meetings. So we have this new capability. The fact is people are willing to buy more weird things, and also we have the tools to deliver them. And another thing that's happened is we're developing a low contact world, right? Particularly with COVID, no kind of handshaking and hugging and stuff. And generally that's kind of that's going to lead to a greater awareness about germs and cleanliness and things. And so we're building a low contact world as well. And all of these, they're all great opportunities for new types of business. And people have done it. I mean, these are just some examples of businesses that have grown in the last 15 years from almost nothing to being world leaders, to being the world's largest in many cases in 15 years. And they just exploited those kinds of factors that I kind of highlighted before. The fact that we have new technology, what people want is different. We want services than products, and we want kind of online or simple to use. And we want to be in control. And these businesses have exploited those trends. So just sort of go back to, we talked about the value for you as an individual, the value for your company or for companies. And finally, as I kind of mentioned earlier on, there is a lot of demand for value, entrepreneurship skills, and the value they generate from countries as well. And I mentioned earlier that, you know, a lot of countries are providing incentives for entrepreneurs to move there and providing office space, funding to help them develop their businesses in their country. The UK, I mean, if you attend one of the Wmg master's programs, then the UK government has recently sort of allows all of that level of a student to stay on and work and set up a business in the UK for 2 years after graduation. So that's an incentive. But also they have these talent visas now as well for people with proven skills can sort of move to the UK. And nearly all countries have entrepreneurship skills on their lists of talent that they want to recruit. That scheme doesn't appear to be so well developed in Turkey, but there are a number of organizations. One of my existing Turkish students kind of did a bit of research, and he found that these were some of the people that may support entrepreneurs or help entrepreneurs in Turkey. So that's great. I've talked a little bit about this mindset that you develop as an entrepreneur. My personal view as well, I mean, I've talked about how it's useful, but it's also fun. It's a positive way of looking at the world. Instead of sort of seeing problems and being depressed, what you do is when you see problems, you get ideas, you see opportunities. So what happens when you've got a great idea, or even when you've got a poor idea? How do we go about now creating a business? Well, one of the things that people get wrong quite often is that they don't understand what they're creating. They kind of think about their product, but their product isn't this. Their product is what the customer can do with the product. How does it change the customer? So when you're kind of thinking about designing and creating your business and trying to understand your customers, the modern view really is that you need to kind of really understand the people and what their needs and wants are. And then your product is kind of derived from that. The old style thinking is that you think of a product, something that you think is a great idea, that you think people will want, and then you find out which people will buy it. The more modern view is find a group of people who have a problem and a need, understand and analyze that need, and then work out what product they need so they can achieve what they want in their life. So there are two kind of viewpoints. There's still the common one is, oh, I've had this great idea for a product. Let's figure out who will buy it. The more interesting and newer idea is let's understand people's problems and work out what products can really help them be more successful in their lives. So this has been a kind of viewpoint change in recent years around how you think about businesses and design businesses. So let's just this example. So as a challenge for you, I want you to create a profitable business selling black socks. Now, on the surface, this doesn't seem like it's going to be easy because socks are not worth much. They're kind of sold everywhere. You can kind of go and buy them at most places. So how do you actually create a profitable business? Well, the first stage is understanding that socks, the value of socks is actually much, much lower than the value of the time that you could spend thinking about socks. You know, if you look at some of the modern entrepreneurs, people like Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook and others, Steve Jobs also, they just wear kind of jeans and t-shirt every day. And that's because they don't want to waste time and emotional energy thinking about what to wear. And so the argument here is that the time and energy of thinking about, oh, I got to have socks, clean socks, is worth a lot more than the pair of socks. Now, once you realize that, you think of a different model. You think of a business like Sockscription, which recognizes that it's not the socks that have value, it's the time and the effort is more valuable for the people. And so what they do is you sign up with them and they deliver you socks at regular intervals throughout the year. Depending on how many you want, you'll get 3, 4, or 6 deliveries in the year of pairs of black socks. And these are quite old figures, but they got 40,000 customers in 74 countries, just shipping out pairs of black socks. I think that's a great business. And the key to it is that they understand the customer. They understand what the customer values. And it's not the black socks he values his time and his energy. So that kind of deep insight is really key to sort of creating successful businesses. Now, ideas, we talked about an idea, that you've got an idea now, but the point is that a bad idea that's implemented well will be more successful than a good idea that's implemented badly. The most important thing is how you implement that idea. So if we go back to that black socks, it was the implementation of the subscription model that was great. The idea of selling black socks was actually a very poor idea. So implementation is more important than the idea. And this is the opposite of what most people think. Everybody's trying to find a great idea. And what we're saying to you, actually, it's the way you implement the idea is actually more important. And so we go through a number of stages. Academically, probably the guy who's kind of worked most on the kind of stages of developing an idea is Alex Osterwalder. He kind of developed this business model canvas as part of his PhD back in about 2010. And this has become kind of the standard model for how you kind of start up a business. But there are problems with this model. For example, it doesn't take into account timing very well. And it kind of tells you what to do, but it doesn't tell you how much effort or resource to put in at different stages. And that his thinking has subsequently been modified by 2 other inputs. One is the kind of design sprint process. And this was a tool that was developed within Google originally. And this was when you've got problems in your business, rather than kind of tackling them in normal ways, it's better to tackle them as a design sprint. And that means getting a group of experts together for a short period of time and going through this 5-stage process of understanding the problem, creating a number of different solutions, deciding what solution, quickly prototyping, and then testing and validating. This design sprint process is now very common in industry for tackling business problems. And the third tool, I think, which affects entrepreneurship is design thinking. And design thinking is putting the customer first, trying to look at everything from the point of view of the customer. I think the point I was making earlier on about understanding the needs of the customer and their lifestyle and their worries and concerns, and then developing your product or your service. Whereas the more kind of natural thing is we think of a product or service that we would like, and then we try and find people to buy it. So all of those things, if we kind of combine all of those things, we end up really with what we call our Wmg methodology. So this is the process that we kind of take you through and teach you and get you to practice on our program. There's a number of kind of ways of looking at it, but we're going to briefly talk about each of these stages, and I'm going to ask my colleague Zhao to sort of make sort of comments on those. But the stages are still the same, but understanding what are the issues and what are the tools that you use in each of those stages is really the key thing, and having experience and practice of using these tools to help you grow your business from understanding your customers to validating and being able to sell your product or service. So the first part is really kind of understanding your problem and understanding the problem. And that there's a whole bunch of different tools, but do you know what goes wrong here? And no matter how many times I tell people, they still go wrong. People fall in love with their idea, with their solution. The first way they think of solving the problem, they fall in love with it. And no matter how many times I kind of say, fall in love with the problem, not the solution. People find it emotionally very hard to let go of their kind of first idea. And this is a psychological problem. One that, you know, I mean, if I take a typical student during the year that they're kind of studying, I'd probably have to say, you've fallen in love with the problem, with the solution, let go. I probably have to say that 5 to 10 times to each student. Psychologically, we tend to fall in love with the thing we choose first. I mean, have you any comments on that, Zhao? On that, on falling in love with the problem or not, or an example on that?
Yeah, I think that certainly is our observation together. So that's a great tendency. So I can give you a quick example. So one of the entrepreneurs we work with, who's making a particular chemical product. So I'm not going to say what, but all this person can think of is, okay, my family business is about this chemical product, and I'm going to make this chemical product. And if I look at the market, and the market is a huge amount of this product, but there's a lot of competition. So all he can think of is, okay, I'm going to try to make it cheaper. The cheaper the better, so I'm going to win over my customers. But as Jay has disclosed, that the competition in an entrepreneurship journey or in the business world isn't necessarily the best thing, right? If you have heard the term of red ocean versus blue ocean, you know, competition leads you to red ocean. That means you end up in a game where you have to keep dropping your price and not being able to make profit. And only after he's been making some great deal of effort, but making more and more losses, he realized, actually, you know what? This solution I've got to reduce my cost isn't going to work, because at a certain point, there's no way I can reduce that even more. So he started trying to understand, okay, what is the real problem? And he started, I mean, there was a question from the audience in the chat channel asking, what are the ways to understand the customer? I think that's a great question to start asking. Generally, there's a number of ways. One is put yourself into the situation so you suffer that pain. And that's precisely what the student did. So he went into the use case of his own product to really understand how the customers experience that product. And there's a number of other ways. For example, you can run survey, and you can also go direct to your customers and ask them what's going on. You can also observe their behavior. But I'm only picking on one in this case. And what he did is he actually fell in love with the use case scenario, which is using the chemicals in industry is quite a challenging activity. There's the health and security, there's the implementation, there's the mixing with different chemicals, and there's the transportation of chemicals because they are poisonous as well. So what's the solution? The new solution is actually nobody really needs the chemical. People need the chemical to do something. Can you offer a service to take away your customer's pain, which is, I need this to do something for me? So his new solution is to aggregate all his knowledge and people up and down the supply chain to provide a service. The service to transport, mix in the chemical, apply it in the customer's place, and help them to use the chemical to do what they want, instead of selling them the chemical. I hope that
it's a bit like the black socks example. You know, originally they thought that the company wanted chemicals, but actually what they wanted was kind of socks and no hassle.
Absolutely. They only wanted an end product that the chemical was halfway involved. So they never wanted chemicals to start with.
Yeah, I think other common examples of that the students come up with is often if they have a family business. We get we want to create our own brand. And that, you know, recent years, that was one student Zhao had, who had a family business making cosmetics. There was a student I looked after who had a family business processing and packaging rice. And they come along to us and say, well, we want to create our own brand. And our kind of usual answer to that is, that's not what we do. I think and so quite often they say, well, what are we going to do then? We say, well, we're going to look at what are the growing trends in this product, what are the kind of new initiatives, and what are the changing needs from the customers. So for example, with the rice, after a lot of difficulty, the student realized that actually, rather than creating another brand of rice, which was just going to be competition, what he needed to do was to create a type of rice where there was very little or no competition. And this is the value of some academic time that you can spend investigating and finding answers to questions. We decided that actually the big opportunity was in fortified rice. Rice by itself is actually not a great food to eat because it's lacking in vitamins and minerals. And we found a lot of research that supported that. And the fact is that what you can do, there is a process where you can grind rice down, add minerals and fortification, and make it and extrude it to make it look like normal rice again. But that rice is much higher value because it's got extra vitamins and minerals, and actually it doesn't actually cost much to make because the input material is broken rice, which is about kind of half the price of kind of normal rice where you don't, you want full proper grains. So your source material is cheaper, your final result is worth more, because I'm sure all of you will agree that you're willing to pay for your children or for your parents. You're willing to pay a bit more to get rice, which actually gives them all the vitamins and nutrients and is much more healthy for them. So we ended up with no competition, with a product that was cheaper to make and was worth more to customers. So it goes back to thinking about the problem. And we've had several students then sort of copy that idea and do it in their own countries. So I've sort of moved on into the next stage, really. So what we're really talking about is this stage one, know the problem. And Zhao talked about, we get silly things. We get, teams of male students who try and design products for females. Well, there's no way they can know the problem. So it's kind of, it's something you really get deep into and understand what the real issue is. The next stage really is kind of creating the actual solutions. So the important question is, and I touched on it, is who are the customers? This goes back to, you almost have to kind of work out who the customer is and get into their mindset before you can kind of create the solution. And understanding within our accelerator, we often get businesses that they've targeted, they don't understand their customers and who the customers should be. So for example, we had a business called OK Doc, and they saw this COVID crisis coming. And so they developed a solution whereby doctors could talk to their patients online, and they could take bookings online and have their consultations online. And then they hoped to sell that to UK doctors. But there was just no way they could do that because UK doctors don't choose what systems they're going to have. Within the actual doctor's practice, they have a manager who makes that choice, but that manager, because we have a national health system, the manager does whatever the national health system says. And the chances of OK Doc managing to persuade the NHS, the National Health System, to use their solution is almost zero. Not in a period of 5 years would they manage that. So then you had to really understand who were the customers. And eventually you explore, well, who are other people who have that same need? You got any ideas? Who has to do kind of remote, who would benefit from remote consultation? Well, in the end, the company is now kind of succeeding in selling their solution to vets, veterinary practices, because the vets are not controlled in the same way as doctors are. And they have more control over their vet practices. So it's about understanding who are the customers and who are the best customers. And if we have a special kind of ability within our accelerator, it's actually helping people find better customers. Often they've targeted the wrong people, and we have a whole bunch of examples of this where we've kind of helped accelerate the growth of companies by helping them find better customers. Do you want to add anything to that, really, Zoe?
No, I'm happy.
Yeah, talking of customers, I've got this example. Okay, so we did this experiment. We bought these dolls, and they weren't very expensive. These dolls are kind of like, you know, £1.50 or £2 each. And then we saw, well, how much could we sell these for? So we put them on like an auction site, and on average, they were selling at about £3, anywhere between kind of £2.50 and £4 we were getting per doll. And then what we did was, well, that wasn't enough for us as a business or as an idea. So what we did is we threw all the dolls on the floor, we kicked them around, we made them all kind of dirty and scruffy. We stuck some pins in them as well. So we did a bit of work. It was fun work. And then we put them on sale again as voodoo dolls. We sold them, instead of play dolls, we sold them as voodoo dolls. Guess how much money we got selling them as voodoo dolls? Between 12 to 15 pounds. This is about finding the right customers. But it's also about thinking about that issue of who is the customer who would be willing to pay more for this product or service that I've got. So the next stage is creating this minimum viable proposition. And that stage is about, the fact is when we're kind of thinking, oh, what we're going to offer the customer, we get into this, oh, we can do that, and we can also do that, we can add this feature, and we can provide this service. And pretty soon you end up with a kind of bloated product. And even if customers buy it, and remember the cost is going to be high because it's got all these extra features in, even as customers buy it, you don't know exactly why they're buying it. So this minimum viable proposition, MVP, is what is the minimum that it's working out what is the minimum I give to the customer that they would be willing to pay for. So it's understanding the key factor that makes the customer decide to buy or not, and how much that is worth to them. So it's important to kind of understand what this MVP is. Otherwise, you end up producing a product with unnecessary features, extra complications. Your business will be more expensive to run. The product will cost more to the customers. And you haven't asked this simple question: what is the minimum that the customer is willing to pay for? And you may have to do some experimentation to understand this. But it's important as part of the process, because once you've understood the minimum, you understand all the additional things that you can offer later on to create more value. You got any thoughts about this MVP, Zai?
Yep, I think I'd like to add here. So we had quite a number of students that tried the MVP, and it worked in a very effective way in terms of gaining their customers' trust. So for example, one of the students Jay and I both helped and now still in contact with, she runs a employment agency, online employment agency. And what she does is she finds people a lot quicker. So she finds freelancers to some extent to to very quickly fill a position in other companies so that this person can go in and solve some problems ASAP because the skill set fits really well. And when she first started, she wanted to build this to be the best platform ever. So she had a proper specification of a huge platform that allows almost any kind of customers to come in, supply side in terms of freelancers, demand side in terms of business to come in, to sign up, to do all the, the best user interface you can ever think of, to do everything. But actually, you know what, that's never gonna work. And once you actually started practice, and we kept saying, what is the minimum viable that your customer would really need? And it was actually very simple. And I remember in one of the conversations I had with her, she was saying, customers asking, can you give us 3 names? We just need 3 CVs to look at. And the 3 CVs doesn't have to come from any platform. We can live without a platform, but we need to see the 3 CVs. Manually, it's not a problem. And that's opened up her mind. She realized actually the minimum viable is to find those people in the brutalest way and throw the CVs to the customer. So all she did was to run a kind of collecting service on social media, which is a service in Chinese social media called WeChat. Some of you may have come across, and ask people to forward CVs via WeChat. And she had a very small program to be able to say, okay, you have to tick a few boxes to say where your skill sets are. And that's where her starting point is. And through that, she actually secured nearly 100 customers.
Yeah.
Corporate customers, to understand what they really need. And that's the whole journey she's been through. Now she's thinking of, okay, for the platform, what more do I need? What my customers collectively is expecting me to provide them a bit more and a bit more. And hence I can put them in the roadmap.
That's a good example. And this is another psychological barrier or problem. We tend to kind of want to kind of provide a complete thing, but customers have a different idea of what a complete thing is. So nearly everybody gets tempted to add additional features, and this mental strictness of stepping back and cutting it back is quite important. We've only got a short period of extra time, so I quickly want to go through the other 2 stages, and then we can kind of wrap up and have a kind of final discussion. you can kind of do all the analysis that you want of your customers, but you will never really know whether that is the solution to their problem until you get out and you test and validate it with customers. So I think the whole point is, don't spend a lot of time thinking about your product or your service. Get out and test it as quickly as you can, and test it in a low cost way. For example, I had, going back to this recruitment agency, I had some entrepreneurs from Greece, and they asked me, could you build a platform, a marketplace platform for our recruitment, a website for our recruitment agency? And how much will it cost? And I said, well, before you build a platform, I would really want you to go and test what you're offering. And what they were offering in Greece at that time was that if you signed up for their agency, they would guarantee you a certain number of interviews. And I said, well, okay, before I build any platform for you, I want you to go and stand on the Greek streets in Athens. I want you to hand out leaflets to people and describing your service, and see how many people sign up. How many people are attracted by your offer of, we'll get you at least a certain number of interviews. And only when you've proven that to me, is it then worth you spending 15,000, 20,000 pounds building a website platform. So testing and validating, really, really important. And the final stage is really selling it. You've got to develop a pitch that you use to persuade customers, investors, partners, suppliers, distributors. You have to have a pitch. And again, that takes some guidance, some advice, some thinking about how you develop a good pitch. I've seen a couple of businesses that colleagues of mine started that failed because they were busy and they hired a sales manager. An external sales manager will never know the pitch the way that you do, the real value and what it will do for customers. They may have more selling skills, but they don't have all the research knowledge that you've built up to develop your product and business. So both of those two businesses failed because basically this, even though he was a professional salesman, he couldn't do the right pitch. So those are the 5 kind of stages that we take entrepreneurs through. And so we help you develop your idea early on in the program, or you may come in with an idea, and then we basically take you through this process and give you a range of supporting knowledge. For example, how to manage people, how to manage the finances, how to choose what marketing strategy you're going to use. So around this is a load of extra skill building modules and courses that support your judgments that you have to make when starting up and running your business. So I think we sort of come to the end really now. We got a few minutes, Kathy, for Zhao to just wrap up and say his last few words.
Yes, absolutely. I've just asked if anybody's got any questions for Jay or Zhao. So if anybody has any questions, please do put them into the chat room.
Yeah, we're happy to kind of stay here and answer as many questions as you have.
Oh, we do have a question. Can students meet with investors in WMG?
That's a good question. I'll address that. So the short answer is yes, but probably not in the way that you are thinking of. So for example, in our finance module, we actually have a couple of investors, very seasoned investors, to come along to talk about how do you interpret investors' perspectives and investors' demand, hence make your pitch more attractive to investors. That's one way. If you are selected to come into the accelerator or the incubator, then yes, you will have a way and we will make introductions of you to a range of investors. And that's the second way. But if the question is what about, would we arrange a pitch for you? Then the answer is no, not while you're studying.
Yeah, and actually just on that point, Zhao and I have very different views, and you as a student have to kind of understand those. I think that going to an investor is, within a lot of business school teaching, you know, this investment and how you go and find investors is like a really important part of the program. I think that if you have to go hunting for investors, you failed in your business design. I think you're better off trying to design a business that self-funds itself and helps it grow, because the later you leave the investment, the more value you can get from investors if you need them. So I'm kind of philosophically against trying to hunt for money. I think this is something that the books tell you to do, and it's fashionable and it looks great when you say, oh, I got this investment. But students get wrong about investors is they think that investors will give them money for their idea. No, they won't. Investors will give them money once they've proven that they can make money. You know, it's a bit like the old thing. A bank won't lend you money if you need it. A bank will lend you money if you don't need it. And it's the same with investors in a way. So it's not, investors won't give you money for your idea. Investors will give you money once you've proven that you can make money. And I think that's an important thing to remember. So first,
do you want to say a little bit about the accelerator? Because you've got two stages of that, haven't you?
Zhao?
Sure. Yes, we do have two stages of that. So within our accelerator, we have an incubation stage and an acceleration stage. So within the incubation stage, we look at some of the IE students who are dedicated to actually start up their own business. And we provide some proven methodology and relatively light touch guidance to help them to build up that business tractions at the initial stage. Should they succeed in that stage, they would come into the acceleration stage, whereby we have a number of programs designed hand in hand, quite heavily involved into their decision making and business design to really help them to scale that business practice. And again, bring different kind of business model to life. So we tend not to allow them to fall into a severe competition. Instead, we help them to seek ways to break out from competition.
Yeah. Another way of kind of seeing that is the incubator stage. We help you find customers who are willing to pay for your business. So we help you find your first customers. That's the goal of the incubation stage. Now, once you've got some customers, then you need to accelerate. You need to get more customers. And that's the accelerator stage. So that's how I kind of differentiate them. You're in the incubation stage while we're adjusting your business and modifying it to find proof that somebody's willing to hand over money to you for your product or service. Now, once you've proven that, then you need to grow it. And that becomes the acceleration stage. So that's how we kind of differentiate those two stages.
There are a couple of questions in the chat channel. Yeah. So I'm going to read them out loud and also provide an answer. So the first question.
Sorry, Zhao, I was also going to say Mert has asked a question, but if we're able to unmute him, then he'd be happy to ask and sort of have a conversation with you about it. Alpo, is it possible to unmute Mert?
Yes, I can talk. I want to ask your thoughts, because I'm a student who is interested on both of them.
I mean, my background is as an engineer, and I think Zhao's background is as an engineer. What we are basically is engineers first, and then kind of business people and entrepreneurs later. I think engineering is a bit, we talked about entrepreneurial mindset, but engineers have a mindset as well. And some of these stages we've talked about are very, very much like engineering stages. You know, how you design a product or a service and how you engineer and build it. It's almost exactly the same process as how you create a company. You're engineering a company. So I think there's a lot of close alignment between those two fields. And particularly, I think knowledge of engineering helps you address the main weakness that we see in a lot of entrepreneurs, that they have a great idea, they know how to do the business, but they don't know how to engineer the product. And some engineering knowledge and skills can help you a lot with that part of it. And it can help you reduce the costs of developing your product and service quite significantly, because you understand when somebody is quoting you silly offers for particular parts of your product or particular bits of engineering work. I mean, for example, if you ask people, how much does it cost to build a website? I mean, the answers you get back, you know, range from like, in UK money, £100 to almost £100,000. And you as an engineer can make a much better judgment about how much it will really cost. So I think it's a really, it's a great basis. I think all engineers need to have entrepreneurial skills really to really get full value from their knowledge.
Thank you.
Has that answered your question, Mert?
Yes, thank you very much.
Kathy, any other questions?
So how to go about finding ideas, and is it a chance thing, or how do you brainstorm ideas?
That's a really good question. I think the first thing I would say is, look, there are guidelines for helping you evaluate ideas. I mean, you can go online and search websites, and there are hundreds and hundreds of websites that give you ideas for business. But I think what's more important is not so much the generation of the ideas, it's how you evaluate the ideas. So there are some rules that I use that kind of help me decide which are better ideas and which are not so good ideas. One of my most important rules is try to be in a growing market. If your idea is in a growing market, then even if your product or service is not very good, because the market is growing, you will get customers. There'll be new customers coming in who will use it. It's a period when demand will exceed supply. So that's a really important factor. I think the other factor that people get wrong most of the time is they get ideas which are kind of useful or nice to a lot of people. And those don't work, because trying to reach a lot of people is actually much, much harder than reaching a narrow group. So what you want are ideas that really help a very small group of people, grow those and test those, and then grow the idea out. The ones that usually fail are the ideas that are kind of nice and nice for a lot of people. And those ideas are really difficult to implement. So I think the generation of ideas, that happens all the time. And if you hang around and mix with the right people, you'll get lots of ideas. I think what is more important is how you evaluate those ideas. And I've given you two of the rules I use, which really are important in evaluating those ideas.
I've got another question from Ethan, who has a great idea, but needs programmers to work on his idea. How would he be able to find a programmer or somebody to help him with that from the technical side? And is it safe to tell other people the idea?
Oh, yeah. Now, this is the first thing I have to deal with every time we get a kind of new class of entrepreneurs in the thing. There's this general assumption that you have to keep your ideas secret because it might get stolen by somebody else. That is more a sign of your insecurity. I mean, my view is, look, if I can have lots of ideas, and if one of my ideas gets, in quotes, stolen and used by somebody else, I don't care. If their implementation of that idea than me, then they deserve it. The idea has no value. It's the implementation that has the value. And the same idea can be implemented in thousands of different ways. So the value is not created by the idea. The value is created by the implementation. The other point is, the more you talk about it, the more people will comment and make suggestions or criticize, and the better your idea will get. So you go and implement an idea or try to implement an idea without discussing it, it'll probably be a not very good thought through idea.
But what if you need somebody technical to help you implement it? Is that a good idea, or should you be hoping to do that yourself?
No, I mean, it's in the end, it's your choice who you work with, because you have to find somebody that's compatible with you. But what we do is we help you mix among the class and among the others. So we always have, people who are very technical, but chemistry, from biology, you can find those skills. So a lot of the thing that most courses offer is kind of this networking thing. And then even then, there are lots of kind of freelancing websites. So for example, when I want to get work done on an idea, I usually go along to a number of kind of websites which provide access to programmers and coders all around the world. And I work with them to kind of develop my ideas. So it's not a resource that is in short supply as much as we tend to think, if you know where to look.
I think I'd like to add on to that, actually, probably a combination of both of the questions. First of all, if you want to find programs, there's tons of them out there. A great website we use quite a lot called angel.co. That's angel.co. You can find all sorts of developers, but that's not where you'll find your answers, I'm afraid. Going back to the ideas, I believe you do have to find your ideas. And the best place, funny enough, I just posted something about it on LinkedIn and had loads of my previous students echoing, saying that was the right answer, is to go into a sector and find those problems. That's where you'll find your ideas. If you find a problem, enough people are suffering, the idea will emerge ASAP, because people need a solution.
Yeah, this goes back to, I think the question was related to what we started off with. We don't look for ideas, look for problems.
Yeah, look for those problems. And if you have enough industrial knowledge or problem knowledge in that context, and you need engineer, there are so many people that will be willing to help you. I'll give you another example. Another student many years ago who wanted to build a IT solution in farms. Funny enough, I'm looking at Jay's background, sheep farms. And he studied so much in those farms and started pitching his ideas to different kind of farm owners. And guess what? And because he studied so much, and he actually had a vision of how this system would help automatically kind of raise pigs at a scale. So one of the large firms in China actually gave him $20 million US dollars without a single line of coding. And the reason why they backed him was because they already have a technical team, but the technical team does not understand the problem as well as he understood it. So they actually hired him as a CEO and give him the freedom to do this work because he understands the problem, head to toe. And that's how much your idea would worth if you've actually gone through the industry and you really know what you're talking about. You have a vision, and technical expert will be at your fingertip, ready for you to order.
Yeah, two tips on that I can add is one, no matter how much you try to explain to the engineer, to the coder, what you want, they'll struggle to understand you because you speak very different languages. And secondly, did you know by default that if you hire a coder and he builds your idea, legally it belongs to him because he's built the code. So you have to make sure at the beginning that you make clear in the contract that it's all yours. A lot of people don't know that. And they end up losing, they end up not owning the code that they paid for.
Good tip, good tip. And how do you go about sort of smoothing that problem of being able to talk to a coder? So as you as an entrepreneur or a business person and them as a highly technical person, it's difficult. There are quite often people that have to sort of, I don't know, translate between the techies and the lay people. How do you go about that?
All I can say is I wish I knew the answer to that. I think the way people have kind of tackled it is actually have the coder working with you for a while.
Yeah, that would be my answer as well. At early stage, I will never ever hire a coder. I will hire, or I will find myself a partner as CTO, Chief Technology Officer. You may as well find someone who shares your vision and shares the way you're working than hiring someone.
Yeah, I mean, once we hired a company in the coding company was actually based in the States, and we wrote loads and loads of documents and stuff, and the stuff they were building and coming up with was not what we wanted. And in the end, we actually had to pay them an extra money. They hired somebody else who came in and sat with us for a week to really understand what it was that we were trying to tell them and translate it for them. So this is, you know, this issue is a big issue.
So I think it's Ethan or Ethan, I'm sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, asking how to legally prove that it is my idea. I'm afraid the answer is no. Not in any territory you will be able to patent your idea. So that's why James kept saying that idea is worthless and the execution is the key. If you have an execution, if you have a product, you have an engineering process to deliver a solution, you can patent that. Idea is not patentable and you cannot protect that in a legal sense.
So if you're employing somebody to develop something for you, you can't get a legal contract.
You can get a legal contract that says within the contract through, you know, you can decide who owns the intellectual property, who owns the source code, etc. You state that in the contract, and then it becomes legally protected. But the point I was trying to make was by default, unless you remember to do that, for example, with coding, it ends up belonging to the coder.
Yeah. Have we got any final questions? Because I'm conscious that we're at the end of our session now, time-wise, and I suppose, what is it, in Turkey, it's probably starting to get dark now. But what's, if there are any final questions, it's been a really interesting webinar. Thanks very much, Jay and Zhao, and thanks very much, Alpad, for organising this. I hope you have all found it really interesting and helpful as well. And I'm going to put our contact details into the chat again for any questions going forward. And yeah, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. But any last questions, please do let us know.